Call to order this regular Board of Directors meeting for the Siloam Springs Board of Directors, July 5, 2022. Roll call.
Sappington.
Here.
Smiley.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Rissler.
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Carroll.
If you all will please stand with me as Director Burns leads us in prayer and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
God, we thank you for our freedom, for this community, and for those that place service above themselves. And it's your name we pray, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask that anyone that has an electronic device, please silence that. Thank you for that. Next is our public input. If there is anyone here that would like to address the board on any business that is not listed on our regular agenda, please come to the podium.
Good evening. Ron Holmeyer, Civil Engineering, 701 South Mount Olive. Mr. Barnett had to leave town today, so he asked me to come up and let you know that we had put together the exhibit and cost estimates for Coons Edition, which is the, Country Acres in addition to Coons Edition. And just wanted to let y'all know that that had been done. A lot of the key points is going to be very similar to what he talked about with Coons Edition. It goes to the same drainage basin, so it's the same environmental concerns with the Illinois River and the city's intake for the water system. And yeah, it's been forwarded to Mr. Patterson, so he's got all that. So yeah, I just want to let y'all know that he had followed through on that, and he apologizes for not being able to be here in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Is there anyone else? If not, then is there anyone that would like to address the Board of Directors on any item that is on our consent agenda? There is not. So we will move on to the consent agenda. Item A, regular meeting minutes for June 21, 2022. We need to make note that there is a change for the second on the motion to adjourn. That has been changed from Burns to Hunt. If you'll make note of that, please. Item B, dedication of utility easements, 900 block of East Tahlequah Street. Item C, resolution 38-22, special use development permit, short-term rental, 601 North Elm Street. Item D, resolution 39-22, special use permit, short-term rental, 509 East Helena Street. Item E, resolution 40-22, significant development permit, 1300 block of North Progress Avenue for RobertsF Associates. Item F, resolution 41-22, significant development permit, 3000 block of Cheri Whitlock Drive, Siloam Springs School District Administration Building. Item G, resolution 42-22, updating draft authorizations to include an evidence account for the police department. Item H, resolution 43-22, amending certain purchasing requirements for the utility inventory. Item I, lease agreement renewal, Siloam Springs Adult Development Center, 500 Country Club Road. Directors, is there any item on the consent agenda that you would like to have pulled for consideration separate? If there is not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Smiley.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next, we'll move on to the ordinances. Ordinance 22-15, second reading, amending ordinance 1030, City Code 90-33, reauthorizing the percentage of allocation of the permanent one-city-wide sales tax and use. Mouthful. And Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Board. So as the mayor stated, this is the second reading on this ordinance. For everybody's just a short background, in 2013, the city board put a question in front of the voters to change the allocation of the 1 cent permanent sales tax. The city has a 2 cent sales tax today, but 1 cent of that is permanent. And that 1 cent previously was 80% streets and 20% general fund. And in 2013, the voters approved to reallocate that 1 cent sales tax to 40% streets, 40% public safety, split 50-50 between police and fire, and 20% to the general fund. That vote and that split was valid for 10 years. So at the end of October 2023, that split will revert back to the 80% streets and 20% general fund. Subject to the approval of this ordinance, the voters would be asked to approve keeping the current split, 40% streets, 20% police, 20% fire, 20% general fund, in perpetuity. And staff is available for any questions. We've not received any public feedback on this since the first reading.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to ordinance 22-15? There is not. Directors? There being none, do I have a motion to place ordinance 22-15 on its second reading, suspending the rules, reading title only?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 22-15, an ordinance amending ordinance number 1030, reauthorizing the percentage of allocation of the permanent 1 cent citywide sales and use tax to take effect on the expiration of ordinance number 13-15 on October 31st, 2023, and for other matters pertaining thereto.
Next is ordinance 22-16, second reading, amending Municipal Code Section 82-41 for transfer station tipping fees. Steve?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Board. Steve Gorzek, Public Works Director. The second reading of this ordinance has been amended based on discussion of the board at the June 21st meeting. So to get into some of the particulars, the Class 1 waste, which is municipal solid waste, was raised from $55 a ton in the first reading to $60 a ton. This is only $5 higher than what the landfill charges. Class 4, which is municipal construction and demolition waste, was raised from $60 a ton in the first ordinance, or in the first reading, I'm sorry, to $75 a ton. This would put us $20 higher on the first ton than the landfill, but $15 less for the second ton. As you remember, the landfill charged $165 for the second ton, and then $165 plus $55 for anything after 2 tons. Any trash less than a ton will still be prorated as it has been, and the minimum will still be $5. There has been no other comments on the first reading, so staff recommends that the board considers the second reading of this ordinance and stands available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to ordinance 22-16? There is not. Directors?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to thank Steve for go ahead and listening to us and making those changes, make us more competitive, and appreciate it.
Welcome.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion to place ordinance 22-16 on its second reading, suspending the rules and reading title only?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 22-16, an ordinance amending section 41 of chapter 82 of the Siloam Springs City Code as to solid waste tipping fees for outside customers and private bulk haulers.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 22-17, second reading, amending Municipal Code Section 98-145 and 98-179, water meter and water tap fees. Steve?
Thank you again, Madam Mayor and Board. Steve Gorzek, Public Works Director. There has been no comments regarding the first reading, and therefore staff would recommend that it move on to its second reading and stands available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to ordinance 22-17? There is not. Directors? Do I have a motion to place ordinance 22-17 on its second reading, suspending the rules and reading title only?
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 22-17, an ordinance amending sections 145 and 179 of chapter 98 of the Siloam Springs City Code relating to charges for water meters and taps.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 22-19, first reading, amending section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from A1 to PD, 500 block of North Progress Avenue. And at this time, we will also be considering Resolution 44-22, which is a special use development permit, large institution, for the 500 block of North Progress Avenue, the Cove at Sager Creek. And Ben will present the information for both of these, and then we will have separate votes on those. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the board. Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. So as the mayor mentioned, I'll be covering both the ordinance and the resolution because they're interrelated. So for the ordinance, you're looking at rezoning from A1 to PDs for planned development. And this is at the 500 block of North Progress Avenue. And also to allow for a special use permit for an institutional use that will be per the requested zone, not the existing A1 zone. So getting into the submittal, the applicant is, as I mentioned, requesting planned development, which is a PUD, a planned unit development, that allows them to basically craft specific sub-areas within the zone that have different standards. So there are 4 different areas, Area A being for planned assisted living facility, Area B being townhomes, Area C for single family, and then D for a mixed use multifamily and commercial. And I would like to point out that D is actually in 2 separate spots, one accessible off of East Tahlequah Street, and then the other one a little sliver of land right off of North Progress, as shown on the map there. So I'm going to go into each specific area and kind of cover that. And the reason for that is what they're requesting is customized zone standards for each sub area. So it's not going to be the same zoning for the entire property, but for each area we'll have different specific zones. So for zone A, that's what they're calling the assisted living facility, which is the nature of the special use permit for the institution, which I understand is more like a senior dormitory with a centralized eating area and that type of thing, not necessarily a licensed assisted living facility, but similar to one. And this will have a greater setbacks to for the desired development within that area. And the remaining standards are more or less consistent with the GI zone at General Institutional. And you can see there on the side, this is taken right out of the staff report, what the different specific standards are for the minimum PD zoning and then what's being proposed with their request. So moving to the next area, Area B. This is the townhomes, which is styled as that. They're not necessarily individual ownership. There'll be one unit owned by a single party that will be then leased out to the individuals. We did confirm that this will be single-story townhomes, so only one level to get in. They will be developed on the larger lot, similar to a multifamily project, and the standards are generally comparable to the existing PD zone standards with some customizations, as you can see on the right, what's been changed. And then Area C, this is the single family, and it's not your typical single family development. It's what you would call new urbanist, which is more of a traditional neighborhood development where you would have front porches that are put closer to the street and rear alleyways, so the garages are actually behind the homes, not along the front, which creates kind of a stronger community feel, sense of place, and that's kind of what they're going for with that, and strict, architectural standards and that type of thing that would go into that development. Because of their style development, they are requesting lower setbacks than what you would normally see, and that would just be to accommodate that style development. And then the last one is the mixed use, which is the mixture of the commercial and residential. And then, as I mentioned, there was the two specific areas that are separated from each other. These standards are generally consistent with R4 MPD, as shown, with a few areas where they do have lower setbacks, basically due to the fact that they're trying to maximize the development. Also, keep in mind that these are not going to be the final lots. They would have to come back in with a preliminary plat to lot out the different lots within the development. And then for the large scale, that would come back as a significant development permit. And then this is the concept plan. So this is kind of showing you generally what they're wanting to do. I would like to emphasize this is concept only. So this is not going to be what it will finally look like, but in general, what they're trying to aim for. So we have the assisted living area right here, drainage all up along the edge of Progress, the townhome, which would be accessible from a cul-de-sac. That at the end of that, we would get to the assisted facility. And then separate from that would be sort of a horseshoe single family. And you'll see all these have rear alleyways on them, which is the intent of that type of development. And then the frontage would be the mixed use, small scale commercial with maybe apartments above, something like that, that would fit in with that development. Just to reiterate, the special use permit, the reason that's a separate vote for you is because that's not permitted by right within the PD zone because of it being use unit 14. So that's what would require that separate vote. And then lastly, we have the future land use map. This is the current 2030 land use map, not the future land use map, which is coming in a couple of weeks. But this shows essentially as a commercial frontage with mixed use tucked behind. And then we did look at the new one, and it showed pretty much mixed use in this whole area. So they're both consistent. And then lastly, we have the site view. This is the property looking to the north with the high school and hospital back in the background. So we are recommending approval of both permits. With one condition needed on the rezoning to allow for the special use permit. The property is currently zoned agricultural, as I said, so this is needed to approve the special use conditionally on the approval of the required PD zoning. And with that, we are available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to Ordinance 22-19? If there is not, directors. Do I have a motion then to place Ordinance 22-19 on its first reading, suspending the rules and reading title only with the stated condition.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Allen,
Abstain because it's family.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 22-19, an ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code, City Zoning Map, rezoning from A1 to PD, the property located at the 500 block of North Progress Avenue.
Thank you. And then Resolution 44-22, the special use development permit for the large institution 500 block of North Progress. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this resolution? If there is not, directors?
Mayor?
Yes.
I feel like we should say something. This is gonna be significant, but, the thing I'm most excited about, this is a need that we have. We've spoke of it before. Ravenwood's a great reflection of folks that are living there that are, aging and wanna be close by stuff and that connectivity. And I'm also excited about that doing the housing. I spoke about before about the missing middle housing. And so if you go around Northwest Arkansas, you'll see some of these neighborhoods where the front porches and the parking's in the back, and just the, you just get a sense of kind of community and that cottage feel, and there's a connectivity there that, kind of represents our flag, right? Where, your neighbors become friends and that sort of thing. So I'm really excited, and I'm happy that you're using the word detention pond and not retention. Is that true, Ben? On the ponds? Oop.
Kevin Moore, City of Siloam Springs Engineering Department. What exactly was the question?
They show two significant ponds in the front, and as I read through there, I believe they earmarked detention and not retention.
Yes, and that will come through as part of the significant development, so I don't know yet whether those will be wet detention basins or dry, like some of the ones that we've seen come through recently. But yes, those will be detention ponds of some kind.
So for commitment, sorry. I tried, but thank you, sir.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Carol.
I'm extremely excited. I think this is going to serve a need that we haven't fulfilled yet for our community. And even when I was on the Planning Commission, which has been some time ago, we were talking about the rear entrances, having driveways in the back, having alleys, so that we are getting closer to the sidewalk where people are walking and a more of a neighborhood feel. So I think this is a tremendous asset to our community, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mindy.
since Director Burns said we should say something, then I'll go ahead and say something. I am very excited about the idea too. My understanding is that the townhomes will be for 55 and plus, right?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, so I just think that is really ideal that we'll have some place for the 55 and older, and then at some point, if they do need the assisted living, they would be right there. And
Right.
so I think that's a wonderful plan, and definitely meets a need that we have in this community. So hoping it all works out.
Thank you, Mindy. Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 44-22?
So moved?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Allen.
Abstain, same reason.
Thank you. Next is Resolution 45-22, Final Plat Development Permit, Siloam Warehouse Edition, 650 Highway 412 West. Ben?
Yes, thank you again, Madam Mayor, members of the board. So what you're looking at is a final plat development permit. It's for roughly about 30 acres, technically 29.62. This is at the former Franklin Electric building. I think most of you know where that is on Highway 412 between Elm and Carl Street. And this is coming before you because there's no corresponding preliminary plat with this because they're just dividing up the property. They're not putting in utilities or anything like that right now. So what they're, just to orient you, so this is the Franklin Electric building. This is the entire site. So they have a lot up here on the corner, another lot on the other corner. So this is Carl, that's Elm. And then we got the another lot down back behind, which on the back of the project, with the access still maintained for the Franklin, the old, former Franklin building. So no lots being cut off or anything like that. In terms of the site view, let me just go to the next slide here. We'll see that there's a parking lot there. So roughly one of the lots is going to be coming in like that, basically kind of cutting off that parking lot. And as you know, we have a green space buffer requirement, so that the new lot line is essentially creating a nonconformity because it's already paved. So what we're doing is, to fix that, is requesting a condition related to the removal of some of the parking lot on the northeast corner of Lot 3. That's for this area, the parking lot right there. That's being cut off from access from proposed Lot 2. The applicant will be filing a separate access easement when the final development design is known for Lot 2. And then the final condition we have there is related to the existing parking lot, which I was just mentioning, that the paving that would be along the property line on both sides would be removed. But we would require that in association with a building permit. So these lots can be sold now, but when they come back for development, they will then grade the site and pull up this pavement that's in the way. So with that, those are the conditions that we're recommending with the approval, and we are available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to Resolution 45-22? There is not. Directors. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 45-22 with stated conditions?
Move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Motion is approved. At this time, we are down to our staff reports. First will be our annual Planning Commission report from Ben.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Mayor. I don't have a slide for this one. I'll just talk. But just some highlights on the report. It's pretty straightforward what you see there, but I did want to point out that our activity is up by 81% compared to the same period last year. And one of the main reasons for such a sharp increase in permits was the increase of special use permits. The previous reporting period only had 2. This last time we had 20, and that was mainly because of the short-term rentals that we're now requiring to get special use permits, so there was a big rush on those permits. We also had 4 additional significant development permits and 4 additional preliminary plats, which did up the numbers a little bit. And we are available for any of your questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions, directors? If not, we will move on to the next 3 items, which is the review of proposed utility commission regulations, the May financials, and the administrator's report. Philip, those are yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Board. Back in April, we had a discussion, the board had a discussion and directed staff to draft some regulations as it relates to a utility commission. So we had a workshop, I believe, on that date back in April. We presented some of the findings of the research that we had done on various utility boards and commissions throughout the state of Arkansas and in Oklahoma. And what staff did was ultimately review or try to take the highlights of all of those that we found and create a draft set of regulations establishing a utility commission for your review. So I won't go through everything, but I'll hit the highlights on this draft. So we created a mission statement that the commission is responsible for assisting the board by advising, reviewing, and making recommendations regarding matters related to the business operations of the water, wastewater, electric, and solid waste utilities provided by the city of Siloam Springs. We are suggesting that the membership consists of 5 individuals who would serve staggered terms. If you look under section 3 on page 1, the initial members, position 1 would serve a 1-year term, position 2 and 3 a 2-year term, position 4 and 5 a 3-year term, and then they're staggered every 3 years that way. So every year there's potentially a new member or 2, but there's 3-year terms that are staggered. This is drafted as if this would be adopted before the end of the year, right? So if it's not adopted by then, we had to change the dates. That's feasible. Section 4 talks about appointments and successor commissioners. The compensation, $100 per meeting for any commissioner. And then on page 2, initial meetings beginning in January of 2023, and then regular meetings beginning in June of 2023, and that first 6 months being educational type meetings to bring them up to speed on the operations, the budget, the process that the city goes through with rates and everything they need to know to be able to make informed decisions, at least the background information. Regular monthly meetings, special meetings. We would have senior employees attend those meetings. Obviously, all meetings would be open to the public. We would have to notice the meetings just like we would notice the board meetings. They'd be subject to FOIA. We'd have to have minutes. We'd likely have to record it just like we do board meetings. Item number 7 on page 2 just talks about the officers, the chair, the vice chair. And then moving on to page 3, number 8, procedural rules, affirmative vote of a majority to make any recommendation to the board. Under number 9, we're suggesting 8 hours of training. That would be for any new commissioner and be for all of the commissioners that first 6 months. And then under number 10 on page 3, we tried to outline what the task of the commission would actually be. So if you just look at those enumerated headings there, providing strategic guidance to the board on goals and policies for the provisions of those services, providing recommendations on rates and reviewing rates at least not more than not more than every 5 years. Debt, if the city or the utilities wanted to issue any debt, it would need to go through the utility commission and have a recommendation made. Regulations governing the services of those utilities. And then on the next page, execution of any interlocal agreements, selling of water to Watts or West Siloam or any of those type of utility agreements would go through the utility commission first, and they would make a recommendation to the board. Same with the wholesale purchase of electricity or water. Any exercise of eminent domain would go through the commission first for recommendation to the board, and then any new services that may be explored by the board. And then reporting, and then there's a provision in there for the solution of the commission by a majority vote of the board. So that was our again, attempt to take what we thought was the best of all of those utility boards and commissions that we presented to you back in April. And it's a place, I think, at least for a starting point for discussion. We felt it was the best for us to draft this and then put it in front of you and try to have some discussion. And if you're comfortable with it, we can bring it back as an ordinance. If you have some comments, questions, or concerns, and give us direction, we'll go back and amend it and come back and have a discussion at some point. So, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Philip. Directors, any questions at this time?
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
I have
Marla.
a couple. I was looking at Bentonville's, and it looked like to me that they had an application process and then an appointment by mayor. You did not say anything about making an application. It would just be appointed. And
Yes, ma'am. The idea, we didn't put the whole process for the application here, but the idea that we would have, and the comment was made back in April, that the board would want to appoint these. So what we would do if this starts moving and gaining speed, we would draft, I don't know if it would be an application as much as to put the notice out there that if you're interested, submit a resume, submit a letter of interest. The mayor and I were discussing today, and my recommendation would be that the mayor appoint maybe a 3-panel consisting of board members to do the interviews, and let that interview committee make a recommendation to the whole board as to who that committee would recommend for appointment.
thank you. And what does planning and zoning get paid?
I believe it's $100.
$100 also. I think that's all. Thank you.
Marla. Anyone else? All right, sir.
So is that silence at least a nod for staff to proceed with putting this in ordinance form and bringing it back?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Carol.
I would say go forward.
Okay. That's,
I can't speak for anybody else, but
I see head nod, so that's where we'll proceed.
Oh, I believe you need to allow us the time to review what you've given us. I would also like to see the plans from these other cities. I'd like to review them myself. Is there not any other cities besides Bentonville that's closer to us that has a utility commission?
When we presented it to the board back in April, we reviewed, I believe, Hope, Arkansas, Russellville, Arkansas, Bentonville, and Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and I thought maybe it was Pryor, Oklahoma. So I think there were 4 or 5 that we viewed and presented the pros and cons, or at least a summary of each one of those to the board back in April. But I can, Director Allen, I can find those original, I think staff has those original regs for those, and be happy to ship them to the whole board if you'd like.
Well, that's fine, but that'd be great. What I was curious, is there not any other cities close to us besides Bentonville that have a utility board? Is Fayetteville
No,
or Springdale or any other?
Those are the only ones that we found that had their own electrical too.
Okay.
So that's the way we couched it.
That's what I figured. I just wanted to make sure that
We didn't look at
case.
cities that didn't have their own electric.
That's what I assumed.
Madam
Just wanted to
Mayor.
make sure. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Marla?
Philip, when I was looking over Bentonville's, they started, was it in 2019 with their,
I believe so.
and is there any of the ones that you looked at that has a little longer running time?
All of the
They
other
have-
ones had longer running times. So Bentonville is the newest one that they had just started theirs. Hope has been around for a long time. Russellville's been around for a long time, and I think Pryor was also around for a long time.
And it might be helpful if there's any of them that purchase power like we do from GRDA or anything, and how GRDA works with them.
And I would say that Pryor would be
Pryor.
that one. I don't think it impacts the purchasing of power with GRDA. I'd have to go back and look and see what the regs were for prior. Understand some of those that we looked at gave full autonomy to the utility board, where they get to set their rates, they get to set their own budget. Some only gave some autonomy to the utility board, where they got to do things on their own, and then other issues they had to make recommendations to the city board, like rates. Bentonville is one that said it's a more like a commission. Every decision is a recommendation to the city board. And that's the format that, based on that discussion back in April, that we heard, at least from this board, that's where you wanted to sort of not necessarily mirror what Bentonville is doing, but that umbrella of setting up an advisory board. And that's, we called it a commission because we felt it was more appropriate than a full board to call it a utility commission, being it's more advisory. But
Anyone else? All right, you have your direction.
So, Director Allen, based on your comments, what I'll do tomorrow is I'll try to flip all of those other copies to the board, and then we won't bring this back for, let's say, a month. And if you individually, if you have any comments or questions, by all means, shoot me an email or something, but give you time to everybody to digest it, and obviously you can amend it as we go forward, if that's.
Well, I will state that getting our board packet on a Thursday evening before a holiday weekend that we have city staff out on a Monday, and we're supposed to have reviewed all of this and be ready to send it for ordinance right away. You've already stated that you're not intending for this to go into effect till January 1, so I don't think there's any rush to put it into ordinance.
Director Allen, I was just looking for some direction, and
Yeah.
without any comments from the board, I was assuming that we could go forward. I would comment that if we are going to publish a notice to
Understood.
for commissioners and give you as an interview committee, whatever that is, time to review and interview those individuals. You know, time is not of the essence today, but as we continue to move closer to the fall, it will become more difficult to do that.
Agree.
But that's, again, if I'm not trying to push this to a vote for first ordinance in 2 weeks, I was just looking for some direction, and I think we got it.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, if there are no other questions on this,
I believe you are good.
you have the May financials in your board packet. As always, if you have questions, please feel free to contact myself or Christina in finance. Pardon me, to get through all of these. And then lastly are my administrator's report. I have a number of items to report and a couple of updates that aren't on here. In the expenditure list, $51,348 in Public Works in the street division for a 2022 diesel, I believe it's a diesel 3500 Chevy Silverado. It was originally, it was budgeted, it replaces a 2003 Ford truck. $47,300 in the electric for 32 single-phase metal enclosures and 30 single-phase metal ground sleeves for inventory and line extensions. $32,123.32 for the fuel at the city's fuel farm for 4,000 gallons of unleaded gas and 4,000 gallons of diesel. And $39,120 at the airport for 8,000 gallons of Jet A fuel. Per Resolution 6121, prior to the end of June, $93,600 in the electric for inventory, 20,000 linear feet of single-aught primary wire for inventory, $99,729 in the electric department for 7 225 kVA 3-phase pad-mounted transformers, estimated delivery second quarter 2023. Again, that's inventory. $99,735 in the electric for 1,567 kVA single-phase pad-mount transformers. Again, second quarter 2023 estimated delivery. That's inventory. And then the last purchase in inventory in the electric, $98,380 for 10 250 kVA single-phase pad-mount transformers, and those are third quarter 2023 estimated deliveries. Many of you and many of our neighbors in the city were enjoying the fireworks last night, and I just wanted to publicly thank the staff who worked that. We had a number of staff who worked that event in community development and parks, including Don Clark, James Harris, Nathan Bailey, Joseph Leroy, Corbin Edmonds, Levi Spence, Danny Wadlow, Joseph Hunter, Charlie Crandall, and Ray Ellicott. In the police department, Lieutenant Chase Fine, Corporal Deandra Strickland, and Officers Jeremy Brown, and Nathaniel Van P., Josh Fritz, and Chris Sally. And in the fire department, Battalion Chief Jordan Jackson, Lieutenant Cale Fine, Lieutenant Micah Eubanks, firefighter and medic David Betha, and firefighter and medic Blaine Adams. And then we had 2 DEM volunteers, Eric and Tom Wolfram. And they did a great job of protecting people as not only the fireworks are going off, but more importantly, when everybody was leaving the event. It becomes a problem trying to get everybody out on Highway 59. I think there are times that we really need to start thinking about different locations for the fireworks event, and staff is working on that, because I believe it's just one of these days there's going to be an accident on Highway 59 when everybody's trying to leave that event. But I want to thank those staff for working that. They all did a great job. We've talked in the past about the problems with the recycling bins at the sanitation department. We put those out a few years ago to make them available 24/7. We continue to have problems with individuals dumping trash in the recycling bins, contaminating the recycling. We are planning on moving those bins back within the fenced enclosure at the beginning of next month. So we'll start putting the word out for everybody. They'll be open when the sanitation department is open, but they won't be available 24/7. And then a few weeks ago, or back actually I guess almost 2 months ago, April 19th, we discussed the offer from GRDA as it relates to the potential sell that they had made an offer of the Oklahoma land that's owned by the Siloam Springs Water Resource Company. There was a lot of discussion going back and forth. I saw online, I had emails about that offer from GRDA, and I just wanted to ask the board to provide some additional feedback. I don't think it ought to be a decision that's done by a simple majority. I think it's bigger than that, and I would just like to get a little direction from the board. For everybody's knowledge, if I can call up the slides, I worked on some slides this afternoon. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to get it out to everybody. And let me find my controller. So the city owns 453 acres in Oklahoma, and all those parcels in yellow are what the city owns. About 357 acres on the south side of the river, and on the north side of the river going up to the top of the screen. That section going up is where the underground water line is coming from, the water intake headed toward the state line, crosses the state line, and then goes on up to the water treatment plant. The section 17, the large area there, is about 250 acres or so on the south side of the river, south and west side, and then on both sides of the river as it gets to the bottom of section 17. And then we have 3 other parcels further south, further upstream of the water intake that are separated. So that's all of the property that the city owns in Oklahoma through the Siloam Springs Water Resource Company. GRDA, with the help really, through the Oklahoma Secretary of Energy and Environment, offered to purchase about 317 acres for $375,000 with the conservation easement. And let me see if I can get this to work. So that was 221 of the acres, which is the area, most of Section 17, outside of what's required as a buffer around the intake. And then the other three parcels down south, parcel 1, 42 acres, it's on the river. Parcel 2, 25 acres, it's on the river. Parcel 3, 28 acres, is on Ballard Creek that flows directly into the Illinois River. The idea behind all of this, from GRDA's perspective, was to preserve it, to let them manage it, and it not be developed for anything other than maybe some passive recreation. So that was the gist of that discussion. This is a slide showing that, this is directly off the Oklahoma GIS page, showing that all of that property is in the 100-year floodplain. I can't say that it can't be developed because it's in the 100-year floodplain, but you have to flood-proof non-residential properties. Residential properties, you have to generally raise the final floor elevation 1 foot above the 100-year flood level to be able to develop that property. But the idea behind preservation of all that property is to protect the water quality in the Illinois River. That Mr. Ed Fite, representing GRDA, that was his passion. That's why he's interested in it. And that ought to be the city's passion, too, to protect the quality of water upstream of the water intake. I was asked if we looked at any comps, I was asked if who owned the property around some of the property to the south. You can see the 3 parcels that Siloam Springs Water Resource Company owns. You can see GRDA owns a large swath of that in the middle. The city used to own that property. We didn't sell it to GRDA. We lost it in a legal battle with a Mr. Langley who won a legal battle in adverse possession against the Siloam Springs Water Resource Company. And GRDA eventually bought Mr. Langley out. And I'll speak to it in a minute, but that purchase was based on originally offering Mr. Langley to purchase a conservation easement for $75 an acre for 30 years. It's 200 some odd acres. So it was about $525,000, $550,000. Mr. Langley didn't want to wait 30 years to get all of his money. He said, just buy me out now, and that's what GRDA did. That should show up, yep, right there. So that GRDA purchased that Langley property, 214 acres in 2020 for roughly $2,400 per acre. I found 2 other comps, 2019, Cincinnati Creek property, purchased 377 acres for about $2,500 an acre. And the only other comp in that area that I could find, 2016, 42 acres were purchased for just over $2,700 per acre. All of those were, market rate, private entities with the exception of GRDA. This was, when we talked about it back in April, this was an additional 37 acres. This area is really the buffer zone that is required by the Arkansas Department of Health around our intake. We have to control and manage what goes on, or another governmental entity has to control and manage what goes on 300 feet above the river on each side, a quarter mile upstream and a quarter mile downstream, or to some weir or dam structure that would prevent the water from coming back upstream. So that's basically it, except on the downstream side it really ends at the dam. But that's basically the 300-foot level on each side. When we talked in April, I mentioned that we needed to ask the health department, the Arkansas Health Department, to verify that the quarter mile upstream was the maximum, because in their rules and regs it says it could be the minimum. It doesn't have to be a minimum quarter mile upstream. So in my discussions with the Arkansas Health Department, They did say, yes, that's the buffer, 300 feet, quarter mile upstream, quarter mile downstream, or to the dam, either one. I discussed with them the concept of selling this land, and excuse me, I'm going to back up 1 second. Their recommendation would be not to sell this property, but to retain ownership of it so that we have absolute control of what happens there. But they didn't see any issue from a public water supply of potentially selling that roughly 95 acres. So with that, I would probably not suggest that the larger 215 acre parcel be really into consideration, with one exception. And as I stated before you, I think the board has a number of options. One option is to say, GRDA, thank you, but no thanks. We're not interested, and let's move on. It's my understanding that the $375,000 that's available isn't going to be available forever. There's some time limits on that money. Another option is to obviously accept GRDA's offer, maybe not on the larger parcel, but maybe on this parcel, which was $1,100 per acre. The idea of a reduced price was the concept of a conservation easement. If you put a conservation easement on your property and you sell it on the open market, it's going to be a reduced value because you don't have the development rights. Everything we could find, the value is going to drop anywhere from 35 to 65%, average about 50%. So if you look at those comps are averaging $24, maybe $100, so maybe it's a little bit less than 50%. But the more I thought about this since the last time we talked, the other thought I had was GRDA is going to preserve it anyway, regardless whether as a seller you were to require a conservation easement or not. So another option I thought of was to offer to sell the 3 parcels right there to GRDA at what appears to be a market value of $2,560 per acre. That's $245,000. That's well within the $375,000 that's been set aside by the Secretary of Energy and Environment in Oklahoma. And then the last option in my discussion with Ed Fite last week was maybe a better deal is to continue to own all of it and ask GRDA if they would buy a conservation easement and pay the city for a conservation easement, similar to what they proposed to Mr. Langley. I don't know if they would offer $75 an acre per year for 30 years, but $75 an acre per year would be $23,000, almost $24,000, and over 30 years would be $713,000. If you were to do that, I might suggest we ask GRDA to manage it, control it from access, and do some stuff other than just prevent, the conservation easement prevents development, right? But ask them to manage it. That might lower that $75 per acre. And then, the last option, pay an appraiser, put it on the open market for sale. I think that goes against the concept of potentially trying to protect the water quality, but that's an option. So I know it's a very difficult situation or decision. I know it's controversial, and I'm just trying to get a feel for if you want to continue to pursue this, if you want to say thanks but no thanks, because there's other projects that staff can work on, but there is an opportunity here. I also spoke today to Cherokee Nation. They indicated that there may be interest, but those individuals who I spoke to, the business manager, he's got to flip it over to another section within the Cherokee Nation. He said it would be probably 3 to 4 weeks at the earliest before we would even hear back from them. But they might be interested too. But again, they work with GRDA. He said, we don't want to step on GRDA's toes if they've already made an offer. So I just kind of am looking again for direction, because there's an opportunity here. If you want to take it, if you want to continue to pursue it, let me know. If not, let me know, and we'll proceed and go forward. So it's very difficult for staff in the city to continue to try to maintain and keep people off of that. And there's a real likelihood that if we continue to own it, somewhere down the road, another adverse possession claim could be made. So it's a struggle. The reason I think GRDA came into play was because of the idea that they would preserve it, they would protect it. They're concerned about the water quality, and I thought that was a value to bring back to the city at that point in time. So, Madam Mayor, that's all on that issue. I'll leave this up, and if there's some discussion, I would like to hear that. I would say also that I did get today, 2 weeks ago, Mr. Barnett gave me a copy of the drawing from Mr. Ron Homeyer on the Coons Edition sewer. Today I got the copy for the Coons Edition and Country Acres Phase 2. I have a meeting on Friday with the Arkansas Natural Resources Commission to talk about grants and loans and those type things. It's my understanding that there may be grants out there, but it's for disadvantaged communities. Siloam Springs is not a disadvantaged community under that definition because our median household income is greater than the state's median household income. So I need to have some discussion with ANRC about that because the Coons Edition is not in the city, and I don't believe we would want to take out a loan and pay that off for county residents. But if there's grant money and we can narrow that focus down and just look at the Coons Edition, then maybe that's an opportunity. And in Sunday's paper, there was an article about 911 PSAPs. And I wanted to be very clear. If you read the article, Judge Mooring was quoted as there was going to be 3 PSAPs in Benton County. The CENTCOM, Benton County, Rogers, and Bentonville and Siloam would not be a funded PSAP. And that's the direction that we're headed. However, I want to make it clear to you that Judge Mooring and I are working on an agreement, and I expect him to take it to the Quorum Court Finance Committee on, I believe, the 12th, and then to the committee as a whole, I think, on the 19th of this month, to find a funding mechanism so that we're made whole with the money that we would lose from the state for our 911 state-funded PSAP. So I just want to make that clear. If you read that article, there's a short reference to that, but that's what we're working on because the state is only going to fund 3 PSAPs. More than likely, everybody's going to agree that the lost revenue, our lost revenue, would go to Benton County. And Benton County clearly agrees, at least the judge agrees, that it is in Benton County's best interest that we continue to operate a PSAP here because it will cost them a heck of a lot more in Benton County to cover us than it will for that extra money that they're going to get. So we're working on that agreement, and I hope to bring something to you in August as it relates to that. And Madam Mayor, that's my report. Thank you.
Philip, where did you say those 3 were going?
I'm sorry?
What did the county judge say?
The 4 PSAPs are us, Bentonville, City of Rogers, and CENTCOM, Benton County.
The county,
right?
okay.
And so, being that they are the 3 largest, is likely that if we had to force the state to choose, the state would choose them as the funded PSAPs. So rather than try to argue amongst ourselves who's going to be funded and who's not, what we would like to do is, what the judge is working to do is to get the other cities, which I think have unofficially agreed to let the money that we would no longer get go directly to Benton County and not increase the funding for Bentonville or Rogers because they're not increasing their cost. And then amongst the city and Benton County work out a deal where Benton County hopefully could make the city whole. And it would be this, the same amount of money. The same amount of money will go through until the next census, right? So the state, I was confused at one time, believing that if the state's going to go from 100 plus PSAPs to now 81, that there would be more money to every PSAP. That's not the way the state calculation works. The state divides up the 911 fees based on county population. So there's no more money going to any individual county. It's still a set fee, right? And so the only difference, the money that we would normally get, if the state agrees, it would go to Benton County.
Is there some reason that Rogers and Bentonville are not considering that they share one? Because their city limits seem to overflow and it's just back and
Within
forth.
5 miles of each other.
Yeah,
Both of them have recently passed bond issues to improve their communication. So there's a question about a taxation issue where the voters tax themselves to improve their 911 communications, and now consolidating that might create a bonding problem. So that's really the reasons why both of them were not interested in consolidating.
yeah, okay. Thank you, Phil.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Brad.
I will say my past life, those two departments and the two individuals that run those departments have been arguing this for quite some time. I'm not surprised at all. Met my expectations.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Marla.
Oklahoma land. I'm glad that the health department stepped up and said not to sell, because that's what I felt all along. And these other parcels, with GRDA wanting them, if they're wanting to, do the lease agreement with us, I say let's not rush into anything. I still think that adjacent property owners should be, they may be interested in buying it. It's hard to tell what GRDA owns down in this area, and it almost looks like they're buying spots where they can put boat ramps or have access to the water flow in there, and that worries me. I don't see a rush. We may need to use those as a bargaining or leverage later on in the future with some of the things, since they own so much more land already due to us losing it to Langley. And so I say hold on to it, wait a bit, let the adjoining property owners, if they have interest in it, because, it would be good cattle land and farmland too.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Lisa.
I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks and really studying it over. And if we kept the property, why would we not hire a property manager to maintain it, to keep somebody from taking it over again?
Well, I would say there are a couple issues. The Siloam Springs Water Resource Corporation, which is the Oklahoma corporation, has no revenue. And the reason we have that is to keep arm's length, because there's no tort immunity in Oklahoma for municipalities. So the city needs to fund and provide money to the Siloam Springs Water Resource Corporation if it was going to hire somebody to be a property manager.
Okay.
And the more we do that, if and when there's ever somebody who hurts themselves on that property, is trespassing and hurts themselves, the more the two companies are tied together, our fear is if there were a lawsuit, it's just a paper separation, right? And so, I think, at least from our perspective at one time, if there was interest in selling any of the property, one of the things that we thought of was putting some of that money in the name of the Siloam Springs Water Resource Corporation, so it could formally pay part of its bills and it looked like a standalone corporation, right? So we haven't talked about a property manager. I'm at this point, honestly, not to change subjects at all, but I think property manager is more needed at the kayak park next year, a park host, than the Oklahoma land. But it is a concern because we are always sort of trying to verify what's what over there. And the problem is I don't think it's ever been surveyed on the ground, so finding exactly where the property lines are would be fairly expensive to get a survey out there and mark all of that. But that's not been discussed on our end.
Okay. I'm like Director Sappington. I don't see a hurry. I'm the one that recommended that we also contact Cherokee Nation. We're talking about Oklahoma. When you think of Oklahoma, you think of Cherokee Nation. Because I don't think we should rush it, I do think we should wait and see what Cherokee Nation has to say. I don't think what you were told was exactly what the top people feel. And so I would kind of like to wait and see. And if we do move forward, because we want land preservation, why would we not see what Cherokee Nation has to offer and what GRD has to offer as far as land preservation? Because they both have a different idea of what land preservation is, and they're going to do it differently. And it's nice to know what's going to happen to that land if we're going to sell it. And if we do, I would like to see that we get the most money that we can. 18 acres across the street from Woka sold in January. I think it was $300,000 or $400,000 for 18 acres across the street from Woka. And so I want to make sure our citizens get the money they deserve out of the land. And I know land value is different if it's forestry or if it's for cattle or whatever. Have we looked at have we talked to the forestry division or the federal government on the forestry on thinning those woods out or anything like that? Because you could make money off of doing that too.
No, ma'am. We have not talked to the forestry industry about logging that. Again, from staff's perspective, the idea was to provide as much water quality preservation as possible, and logging that is likely go in the opposite direction for a period of time.
Well, it depends on how far away from it, the water, yeah. I have done research on it.
In the floods that come down there, that land still floods. So that was, staff's perspective is just trying to find a way to preserve it and do the best we could in keeping it in its natural state today, not to log it, not to make any money off of it from its current state other than potential sale. The reason it came up, we were not actively out there marketing it or anything like that. GRDA and Mr. Ed Fite asked one day if the city would be interested, and I said, make an offer. I mean, we had a lot of discussion as you and I discussed. We had a lot of discussion, but make an offer, and we'll go from there. I'll take it to the board and present it, which is what I did.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, and I learned this because Director Burns recommended I go to the IRWP meeting, and there's a lot of things you can do to the land to help the waterway, but sometimes we think it's just not touching it, but sometimes we have to actually touch it to make a difference. And so I was just wondering if we've looked into any of those.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, David.
Philip, the slides that you've done, can you send them to us too?
Yes.
Later? What year did the Langley adverse possession take place?
I want to say 2012, 2013.
It was before that. It's about 2006 or 7.
So I was wrong, 2006 or 7.
This happened years ago with a local man haying the property, and we just hadn't gone out there and checked on it. So if this happened a long time ago, I don't understand why we allowed it to happen again, because we had this same thing come up where somebody was haying it for 10 years, and I guess an Oklahoma attorney let them know what they could do, and they did. They sued us, and they got it. So I'm kind of lost as to how we allowed it to happen again.
When did we allow it to happen again? I'm confused.
Well, I think the Langley is the second time. I think it had happened long ago on the first time.
Yes.
In the late 90s, I think, or 2000, something like that.
Not aware of that one. I'm only aware of the lane.
Yeah, no, it had happened before, And
It
it,
did.
it was a local guy everybody in town knew, and it was just a surprise to everybody because it was, he had put his own locks on it, and he had hated it, and it was one of those things that we hadn't, and what we got told, the city administrator at the time told us that we did not have someone going out and, as you just said, going and checking on it or looking at it, or a property manager. We didn't have any. So I'm just surprised. I did not know until you'd let us know that there had been a second adverse possession. But looking at the 3 individual pieces that you've got on your map there, because that was a key question I'd had, was how did we sell the pieces in the middle? And as you said, that's the Langley. The reason it's missing now is that it went to Langley, or it went to Langley, and then Langley sold it to GRDA. So if GRDA's goal is to get all this land, it seems like they're getting what they wanted. Whether they are the ones to advise others or whatever, I don't know, but it certainly seems like GRDA is getting what they want if they're the ones that are wanting to get the land. And for them to now be coming back to us and wanting to buy at such a low price, little over $1,000 an acre, it's kind of insulting to ask or to offer such a low price. But to be getting now an offer to buy the remaining pieces that are left over, it's just frustrating, especially to know that we at one time owned all of this, and by lawsuit lost it.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mindy.
I would agree that there's not a rush. It sounds like perhaps if we do want to go with the whatever the Oklahoma Secretary has set aside, Secretary of State has set aside, then there may be a little bit more rush there. But I don't know that that needs to guide when we make the decision. I am somewhat intrigued by the offer to sell a conservation easement to GRDA for all 317 acres. I guess one question I have about that, the conservation easement would protect the water quality, correct? Okay. And GRDA, we would ask them to maintain, manage, oversee the property.
So normally, I would believe that when GRDA was talking to Langley about buying a conservation easement, it was to prevent Mr. Langley from doing anything on his property that would hurt the water quality. And GRDA probably wasn't offering to maintain it.
Right.
So as I was thinking about trying to come up with some commentary for tonight, thought if you were interested in having the discussion about a conservation easement, I think it would be wise to ask GRDA if you were to buy a conservation easement, if the city were to sell a conservation easement to you, would you be willing to accept, the oversight of regulating, access to the property and managing it from that standpoint? I don't know exactly how that would look today. It was just a thought for me to say, not unlike Director Allen's talking about, it's not impossible for staff to go over there and try to, figure out where the property lines are, to try to walk all or drive around 300 and almost 400 acres and try to verify what's going on a regular basis. But it's not easy access all the time. And to get on all of the property is almost impossible. So if we could ask GRDA to do that, I thought, well, then that would be less work on staff to try to do that. Director Allen, for your knowledge, when I got here in 2015 and probably 2016, 2017, figured some of this out and asked staff, well, what do we own?
Mm-hmm. Nobody knew.
Let's get the deeds. Let's survey it. Let's at least create some legal descriptions and some drawings so we have a clue of what we own, which we've done, right? But even this parcel right here, parcel number 2, I don't believe there's any access to parcel number
That's
2.
what I was gonna ask.
There-
It doesn't look like there is.
There's no access to it, to my knowledge, without crossing private land in Arkansas, crossing the crossing the state line and coming at it from the east, or getting in a boat and getting it to it on the river, which I don't believe we have unless we use the fire department's rescue boat. There's access to the edges of 1 and 2, and there's access to the edge of that larger parcel. There's access on the west side of that larger parcel there, but there's no trails or anything that goes through that, to my knowledge. So,
I do have,
to your comment,
Right.
that was the idea.
okay, I'm sure I'm missing something, and the reason why I ask if the conservation easement would indeed protect the water quality is because I do think we need to pay attention to what the health department is saying about the 200 acres that they feel like we should keep for the water quality. And again, I don't feel like this is something we need to rush with, but the part where I may be missing something, but it seems to me that selling them a conservation easement and asking them to maintain the property is collecting money and letting someone else do the work, which could be beneficial to us. I'm not sure why GRDA would want to do it, but that seems like a win-win for us.
Almost getting a rental payment in a way.
Exactly. I mean, might be worth getting more information about it.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Brad.
I'll chime in. I struggle with some of our thought process on this board. I don't know if anybody's been out in those woods lately, but I think I've stated before, I have, and I've made the non-access, which is off the river. By the way, it's buggy, just give you a heads up.
Been there.
But, you
Horseback.
know, if we look at the Cherokee point of that, and if we look down at Skelly off Chewy Road, and they've designated the river road as the Great River Road, which was actually one of the access points back in the day, and that's where my dad's side of the family, I first visited there in 1970. So, anyway, I had a 100-acre farm down there, and yada yada. So as you come up that road, there is a huge historical value down there between the Cherokee and the Osage, and down at the old White House where the boat ramp was, there used to be a marker there designating both of Cherokee and Osage side of the Illinois. So there's that. There's also 18 squatters hanging out down there right now. There's also sediment from the old riverbed in there. Clear cutting, running cattle would be the worst nightmare that you could create. We talk about water contamination, pollution. I don't know why we can't get on board with conservation easements, because that sets the tone for the next generation. We get this negative idea that GRDA on this is going to do something crazy, and I don't think that's the case. And they are going to make an access because we need river access. If you're reading anything about quality of life in Northwest Arkansas, and as we have going on at the kayak park on our side of the river, and what's going to happen at Woka and how they're going to regulate it, they basically have used our kayak park as an example of what not to do. I was just down there Sunday morning, and the folks were piling in, and the bank erosion is pretty significant. And if you paddle upstream, which is what I do to try to get away from my fellow human beings, it's nice. And then there's sections where we come in, and if we don't regulate it, and if we don't do conservation, you see these kind of eruptions. If you do not have that riparian buffer zone and go in there and clear cut and do free range cattle, or you do any cattle operation on that, you pollute the water, which will inhibit our intake. And it's just the conversation in my mind needs to be in preserving this land. There has to be access. People are making access right now. You can go to the dam and you can go down some little funky muddy roads and you can make that access. You know, I was fishing there as a kid. I don't have Marla's depth of longevity down there, but I do have a little bit. People want to go to the river. The 59 bridge is going to replace, they are going to replace it. It may not be where everybody likes, and they are going to make a canoe access, a boat access. I would use Chamber Springs as an example of a boat ramp access. It's very limited, it's very narrow, it's cement, and Game and Fish is having a struggle maintaining the quality of that because we failed to regulate it. GRDA has done a great job in Oklahoma, and I'm not a fan of them early on when it was the Scenic River Commission because they started regulating it. Can't park on sandbars. Limited access even for the retail business. No glass bottles, no styrofoam. They started regulating. They made a smallmouth bass destination. They've done those things. It requires some regulation, and that's what conservation needs do. They bring in regulations so that we can't go in there as human beings and destroy it, and it preserves it. And I think, I don't know if I'll be on this board when we make a decision, but if we don't go on the conservation side on that, the next generation will pay, and if we see money more important than conservation and preservation for the next generation, it's a shame on us. Thank you.
Yes, Carol.
I've been associated with this for over 20 years, along with the Illinois River, or the Illinois Water Company. I know how hard it was to access and why some of the times the city did not go out and check on those because they were locked. Not with our locks, but with somebody else's locks. I'm presuming we could have cut them and gone in. But there is not a lot of access. I think I would agree with Director Burns that the most important thing is the conservation of that land. Who can do that? And if GRDA is willing to do a conservation agreement, that's where I would like to see that go. I don't want the city to lose any of the land just because we let it go. But I do think GRDA has a plan. I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But again, conservation is what is needed for that particular piece of property. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Carol. Anyone else? Anything else, Philip?
No, ma'am, I'll talk to GRDA about a conservation easement and about management. We'll wait to see what we hear back from Cherokee Nation, and we'll go from there. We'll have another discussion at some point in time.
Thank you, sir. So at this time, then, we move on to our director's reports. And tonight, Carol, we're going to start with you and go around and end with you, Lisa.
I do want to thank all of the city staff that participated and helped put on the 4th of July celebration. But in that regards, this probably isn't going to be a popular comment, but I've heard a lot of negative comments about allowing fireworks within the city. And I would like to see us just review our ordinance about fireworks in the city. Most of the comments that I've had, they're not in favor of that. It's causing a lot of problems for people, for pets, and it's just not made a lot of our citizens happy. The other thing that I wanted to, this is on a different note, but I was at the kayak park yesterday, and it looked pretty good, and there was a lot of people, but there was a problem with the parking. It was, we had, our police officers were there. I had heard that there had been numerous cars towed on Sunday. They hadn't towed any when I was there yesterday, and that was about 11:45. But it was already full, and people were stopping and asking, where can I park? So parking is an issue, but they were really enjoying it. I don't know how many from Siloam go there, but it's a hit with a lot of people. Also, I want to just let everyone know that there is a blood drive at the Siloam Springs Memorial Hospital on July the 15th from noon to 5 p.m. And that's always an important thing. You never know when you're going to need blood, and I appreciate all those that do donate. The Boys and Girls Club has a snack program that they offer. You don't have to be a member of the Boys and Girls Club, but they offer it from 3 to 4 at their facility. And for those that are looking for things for their youngsters to do, don't forget that the library has a preschool program on Wednesday mornings. They have story time from 10 to 11, and usually the children just really do enjoy it. We have a lot of programs at our library for all different ages, but this is the one I picked today. And that's all I have.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Philip.
If I may, I meant to also report on the weekend at the kayak park based on the information I received from police department. Director Sappington, you sent me an email. That sign that is down says no parking on the asphalt. It's not near the kayak park. It's way outside the kayak park. But on Sunday, the city towed 7 vehicles and Benton County towed 7 vehicles that were parked as far away as Sawmill Road out there, which is where that individual, I think, was. There was one disturbance over parking that police reported on Sunday. On Monday, the city towed 1 vehicle near the kayak park. Again, Benton County towed 7 that were further away on Fisher Ford Road and Sawmill Roads. And there were 2 disturbance over parking where individuals are trying to manually reserve a parking space for some friend that's not there yet and preventing some other patron who wants to park from parking. So it continues to be the demand for the space in the facility is greater than the spaces we have, but we are working on it. We are towing cars. The word's getting out. We generally have not had to tow hardly any vehicles, to my knowledge, since Memorial Day weekend, except for this past weekend. And I'm sorry, I meant to say that earlier. Thank you.
All right, thank you. David?
I want to follow up on what Carol was talking about on fireworks in the city. I have never supported this ordinance. I believe that things worked fine when I was a kid. If you wanted to do them, you went outside the city limits. If you wanted to watch them and observe them, you went out to the airport, or you went to Gentry or the Northwest Arkansas Mall. I don't know if we have a limit on what kind can be shot off, but we've got missiles, cannon shells, artillery, things that are shaking people's homes. And there are more than enough elderly and senior citizens that do not like having these things go off well past midnight on all 3 nights. I mean, there's no abiding by the time that we set in the ordinance. And they're doing them before the allowed days. They do them past the cutoff time of 10 p.m. and midnight on the night of the 4th. I heard one guy say, we're going to do a fireworks war down the street with Roman candles. I worry about the safety of individuals on that kind of mentality. And the mess that is left all over town of people not picking up their leftover fireworks shells, and that gets really ridiculous. I honestly just don't see why this needs to continue, mainly for the noise We just went through and passed a noise ordinance, and what is going on, at least around my house, is well beyond the noise ordinance. And the complaints I've heard from neighbors is well beyond what any fountains or Roman candles or bottle rockets do. In terms of selling the land, the GRDA land, I kind of get tired of being lectured on we all live downstream or all of this stuff. We just heard several board members say we're interested in a conservation easement. Mindy brought up the opportunity that Mr. Patterson gave us as to sell a conservation easement. I just, to be told that we're just missing the boat by not going conservation easement, I just don't get it. I don't get it. I think we are all open-minded on this opportunity, and I just don't understand. I think we should not be in a rush, and we should look at every option that we have available. And I frankly appreciate Mr. Patterson giving us a lot more options than were available before. Because there is a lot of opportunity to either make some money or to sell a conservation easement that would protect the water. But it frustrates the tar out of me to see that we have allowed a citizen-owned, taxpayer-owned bunch of land get taken through lawsuits that should have been fought all the way to the Supreme Court. That is very, very frustrating. But I think we all have an open mind on this, and we need to start accepting that and not be criticizing. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Mindy?
Okay. I too want to thank those who worked at the fireworks display. Heard a lot of good things about it. So thank you, city employees, for taking your time to make that happen. I do agree on looking into a change of location. One concern that I did see over and over again is just the concern that someone is going to get hurt going across 59, or even Cheri, Whitlock, just any of those roads out there where people come to watch the display. As far as allowing fireworks in the city limits, I was one that expressed concern about that last year. I was sort of in the minority, I think, when this was first brought up by a previous director, and because I didn't know that we really needed a change personally, but I reached out to a lot of citizens who were mostly, overwhelmingly the majority, were very much in favor of allowing city fireworks in the city limits. So I felt like, well, that's what the citizens want. Let's try it out. Well, after the first year, and last year was literally like a war zone. Coming from the fireworks display out of the airport back to our home, the smoke was in the air. I mean, it was literally a war zone, and the noise, I mean, it was just so loud. And so I expressed a concern about, at the very least, reducing the hours that the fireworks are allowed. So now that a couple other board members have brought it up as well, I will say I didn't hear as many concerns this year, and I didn't hear the fireworks going on as long. And I think I remember the reason why a previous board member brought this up was to decrease the number of calls the police department got in the days leading up to July 4th, because there were so many people that were shooting them off anyway, and it wasn't allowed, and so they were spending a lot of time. So I guess I would like to know if there has been a reduction in the number of calls during those days that fireworks are not allowed, and I think it's just 3 days. And then the other thing I would just propose is maybe reducing the hours. The midnight on July 4th, especially, well, really midnight on any day can be difficult because people are going to work the next day. So maybe consider or reconsider the hours. Just throwing it out there. Kayak park. I've already hit on the kayak park quite a bit. It's interesting. I got a call today from someone that lives out in that area, and she had some concerns. She did feel like this year was the worst ever in terms of traffic. She saw cars parked all along Fisher Ford between Sawmill and the entrance to the kayak park, which left just one lane because the cars can't park any longer off the road because the county put boulders all along that road. So it leaves just one lane of traffic, which could be a safety issue. If an ambulance has to go out that way, they could have a hard time getting through. So there's a safety issue there. Trash is a big concern, and not just because the city employees have to end up picking up the trash that people leave outside of the trash bins. Kind of reminds me of my kids getting their laundry near the laundry basket, but not in the laundry basket. And apparently that's part of the problem with some of the garbage cans out there. I think we took a dumpster, but it was not used as much as we had hoped. I think there may be some plans to move that a little closer to the actual garbage bins or to the people so that maybe they can use that. But what happens when the trash doesn't get picked up right away and there's any wind, it blows into neighboring yards. So that can be an issue. As back to the parking on the road, there were also people apparently parked in people's yards along Sawmill and kind of disguising where they were parking, so they looked like they were sort of part of the yard there, so they probably were not getting towed, but again, this was reported by someone that lives out there. Another concern is that the park is open till 11, and I understand that sort of city ordinance that parks are open until 11. The problem with that is, well, kind of twofold. One, people are around open water after dark, and I don't know how many people are in the water after dark. I would think it would be legitimate to maybe set similar hours to the pool if we're talking about water. Just throwing that out there. But one of the problems is also the noise. And so with our recent noise ordinance, my question to Philip earlier today was, if the noise is happening in a city park, does someone from the county that's hearing that noise have the right to call city police? And I believe the answer was yes. So that will be something that I will let this person know, because she wasn't aware. She's in the county, so she wasn't aware that she could ever call when someone was violating an ordinance. And this ordinance is actually newer, and I believe is it after 10? It's not up till 11, is it? It's after 10 now, and it's the noise within a certain number of feet.
It's a noise within a certain, I think, 75 feet, but I don't remember that.
I'll go back and look at that and let her know. Okay, and you already mentioned that police were down there on a regular basis. So those were just some questions, some things I think we probably need to think about. I love the fact that people love the kayak park. I love that it's a place where people can go and have fun with their families. But I just think there are some things that we have already heard, we know are concerns, that we really need to figure out ways to address, and specifically around those 3-day holiday weekends, because those tend to be the highest volume days. And so if there is just something more, whatever that is, we can do to reduce the parking violations, eliminate all the trash, enforce the noise ordinance. I was encouraged when you said we might, I don't know that you were saying we might be thinking about putting someone down there to work. I think you were saying if we do put someone down to work, it needs to be there and not somewhere else, but that might be something we need to consider.
Thank you, Mindy. Brad?
Madam Mayor, I'm trying not to laugh. I love it. There's not a house within 75 feet of that kayak park. Good luck. When they first opened
Which
up-
means when they're hearing something, it's really noisy.
Right.
I'm aware. And I know exactly who the folks are, and they have an open ear, and I'm kind. I physically went down there year before last and picked up trash and sent the photos to Philip, along with the numerous beer cans. So this is an ongoing thing, and river access is going to get greater, and I just encourage us to. We need to create access so people can get on the river. True boaters and people that aren't destroyers, because that's what's happening down there right now. There's no regulation in the state of Arkansas for styrofoam or glass on the river, and we have a lot of work to do. We're behind the 8 ball. That is not what I'm here to say today, but I just chimed in. My last chime is I'm humored by the fireworks, because we had this discussion when we passed it. I'm enjoying it because it's a lot like the bike lanes that we didn't like any of the stuff. And I go, thumbs up, all right. But I loved it all. And now here we are again. When Jeff Lewis was at the PD, he got up there and explained what the problem was, because you may have had somebody in Ward 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 that were complaining, and when PD was en route to that noise complaint, PD would say it looked like Beirut. Which one do you go to first? I don't buy fireworks. I would encourage all young people, if you like pyrotechnics, spend a tour in the military and you'll get all you want. So good luck working on that one. This will be fun. I do want to thank, I believe Lisa, Madam Mayor, went to the RWP program and on stormwater drainage, and I think Lisa, I was reading through, I missed the last meeting and a workshop. It opens up your mind that there's other ways of doing things, and we really need to evaluate how that works for everybody, because we all do live downstream, and we live downstream of some big cities that dump in the Illinois River. So sometimes you don't want to see what those particles are. Beaver Lake has to shut public access beaches because the water quality is poor. It's a big issue, and I think we need to be concerned about it. But the 2 key takeaways I had this weekend was July 2nd at Chautauqua Amphitheater, and I don't even know if I say it right. I just blurted out, Carol, so there you go. We had 2 concerts, and one was in the morning, and everybody was going underneath the trees as they grow. We were finding shade spots, right? And it was a bluegrass and a couple of gentlemen before that. And then that evening, that evening was just a community band and concert was just fantastic. And I hope Bob Maples forgives me. I'm a troller of Facebook on the positive side. I don't dump into the other stuff. But Bob wrote this, and the Maples have been around the community for a long time. A huge tip of the hat to Mark Barnett for all the effort he put in, and to all the musicians who worked hard for weeks putting together such a fantastic concerts today. We have such a great facility for those concerts, and the feeling of community can't be beat. And that was my takeaway on that one. And then July 3rd, and no, I didn't go to church. So about 6:30 in the morning, I went out to City Lake with the dog for a paddle. And you need to be respectful for the fishermen. So, we did our little thing. But I ran into a, let's call it a retirement age couple on Dawnhill Road, picking up trash. And so when I got off the lake, I noticed, looking back, they'd gone through the City Lake dock area and used the trash can and continued on down the road. And so when I loaded up, I stopped and rolled down the window, and I don't know these people. And I just thanked them, and they were excited. They got out there early, and that's what they enjoy doing. And I don't even know if I'm assuming they don't live in the city. That's the kind of, when I saw them, I thought, I feel like maybe I should go pick up trash somewhere instead of, the solution is, one of the solutions is keeping things clean. It's just, at some level, we've got to have citizens like that live in or outside the community that are just actively going the extra mile. And I just, I don't know if they watch the board meetings, and I didn't even ask their name. But man, I just, when I saw that, that just kind of set my weekend in the fourth in a, you know, just a different mindset. And so with that, that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Marla?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I want to go back to the Oklahoma land for a minute and discuss what Director Burns had said about the cattle and grazing and stuff. Farmers and ranchers don't strictly look at clearing the land. They look at the trees as shelter. And I've been horseback through that area. ATV access is there. And there's a plethora of arrowheads. So as I know that the arrowheads are there, there's probably some history with Cherokee Nation and the other tribes in this area. And so I don't want it ruined. I don't want someone to come in and put a bunch of bike trails or mountain biking in. I want it natural, but I haven't got the guarantee from GRDA that it's going to be kept natural. When they can come up and say, this is what we are going to do, I would consider it. But right now, since the health department has chimed in and said, do not sell the large area of acreage, I don't think that should even be discussed again to sell that. The smaller 3 is discussable. Kayak park, I got an email, as Philip said. It was from a teacher that lives in Fayetteville, and she had brought her kids over. And unfortunately, the sign was down, couldn't see it. Her car was towed, had her driver's license, all her money, the kids' snacks. I think they were 2 and 5. Her and her husband had no money on them or anything because they were down there to enjoy the park. They ended up having to borrow money from someone because the police officers, I don't know if it's county or city, could offer them no advice on county where to go to get help or how to get help. There's no direction down there, like if your car's towed, you need to do this. So she ended up borrowing money from someone else down there, and that someone called an Uber to pick her up, her and her family, to bring them to town to get the towing. So, you know, I think that every time I hear the word kayak park, I just cringe. You know, it's it's beautiful down there. When I grew up, that was our swimming hole. We jumped off of Fisher Ford Bridge. Well, that's not even possible anymore. And like Director Burns said, it's just the erosion, the bare roots of the trees. It's not being taken care of, and it's not. I wish GRDA would buy it and put in a conservation easement there. So, you know, that's how I feel about that. But going on, I haven't heard that we have a place for homeless to go for day shelter or anything. With it being so hot, Jerry Cavanis was, he initiated some way for us to have a place for him. And since my life work is taking care of the homeless and feeding the hungry, I worry about that. And I don't know if our library is open for anyone to come in there. I know that there's vagrancy for a lot of them if they're seen at Walmart or they frequent restaurants and not able to purchase anything. But the heat is extreme, and there are not places for them to go in our town. And there are small children, infants, living in cars. See it every day. And I just wish that our city would move forward with some kind of day shelter or cooling station, wintertime a warming station, like some of the other cities do. And I just think it's sad that we don't help those that need the most help sometimes. I had some issues with solid waste at our business, and I had visitors come and look at my situation, and we game planned and things are going much better. So I just want to encourage the public, if you have a problem going on, put it on our report a problem page. Get the city out there, contact your director for your ward, and let us go to work on it, because there's been lots of problems that's been taken care of just in a little bit of time. And lastly, we have a big movement for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's everywhere. And it bothers me to the point that I'm afraid sometimes it's dividing us, because we're looking so much at the differences that we don't see the similarities. And I say this over and over again. And I just attended a workshop, UAMS. I'm on a board there. And they refer to it as representation, access, and belonging. And I think that's just everything that a citizen deserves. They deserve to be represented. They deserve access to all of the amenities that we can offer them. And they need a sense and spirit of community. And I think that's our job, is to bring that about for them. And we do a great job doing stuff, but sometimes people get their feelings hurt, or they don't understand the reasoning behind decisions. And that's when we need to slow down, talk through the issues, and I just encourage us to do that. I will not get on social media and discuss city business, but you can email me anytime you want to, or call me. You have my cell phone number.
Thank you, Marla. Lisa?
I'm going to chime in on the fireworks in city limits. When we voted on it, I was like Director Hunt. I contacted the citizens, said, hey, what do you want? What is it you desire? And most of the people said, hey, we want them. We want the choice to be able to let them off. And I have to say thank you to the people in my ward, because it was not loud last night. It didn't go till midnight last night. And this morning when I got up to drive across town, there were people picking up with trash bags, picking up all the trash off that they had from the night before. So thank you to my ward. I did get a lot of text from other people in other wards that said it sounded like a war zone, but it wasn't as bad as last year. And most of them said, would you not consider reducing the hours? So Director Hunt's idea of reducing the hours was a great idea. During the week, people have to get up and go to work. If it's on a Sunday or Monday, if it's on a Friday or Saturday, maybe have it till midnight was most of the responses I got. But if it's during the week, Sunday or on, maybe consider reducing the hours. And so that's a great idea. And that's all I had. So I make a motion that we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.